Welcome to the 2017 end of course test administrator training. Please make sure you listen to this entire training. I know it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but there is important information that you'll need to know as a test administrator. First, make sure you copy down this link, bit.ly/2017 EOC. A lot of the documents and information I usually hand to you in a packet, I'm given to you here in this folder. It's a Google folder. And that way you'll have access to it along the way. And if you need having questions or if you need to reference it at any time, you'll have it. So make sure you go ahead and copy that down. You can pause the video and do that now. Test security. Just remember that this training is intended to supplement and not replace information in the TAM. While you may not have a physical copy of the TAM in front of you, there is a PDF version of the TAM in the folder that I have shared with you. So be sure you've read and understand all parts of the TAM, especially the security sections. A trained test administrator has to be a certified teacher and must remain in the testing room at all times. You are not allowed to pronounce any words or read any test questions in any way, shape, or form to any students. Even our oral administration students are being read to by the computer and not by teachers. Teachers and monitors should not use a computer or cell phone during testing. And please make sure that you instruct all students to place backpacks, cell phones, and other personal items at the front of the room before testing begins. And students should not access cell phones at all or any other devices until testing has concluded in that room for every student, not just that individual student. This year, all tests are online using Chromebooks. Even oral administrations are online. I'll have one or two spare Chromebooks in each room for you to use on testing day. But go ahead and begin to stress to your students to bring a charged Chromebook with them. If you have students who have an issue with their Chromebook, for example, the 5, 6, T, and Y keys don't work, the battery won't hold a charge, that type of thing, go ahead and have them to bring it to the Media Center now for replacement. Don't wait to the test day. We'll be testing in the Media Center and we will not be available to swap out that computer. If you are testing in a room where desktops are in that room, we're not planning to use those, so they're not going to be logged in and ready. However, if you have students who don't have a Chromebook with them that day, or for some reason they need to use a desktop, you may log in and launch the test on that desktop, and instructions are provided for you in your bin. Also, instructions are provided for you in the folder that I have shared with you. If you teach students who are taking an EOC, I'm not going to read this entire slide, but we need to go ahead and practice launching the test. There are instructions in your bins and instructions in the folder for how to actually launch and access the test from inside of Chromebooks. If you've ever used Schoology Kiosk, DRC Insight app launches the exact same way. DRC Insight is our online assessment app, is the app that they'll take the EOC on. If you get onto test morning and students are not able to get the app to work, for example, it says the plugin is not found or there's a white screen, the first line of defense is to shut off the Chromebook completely, restart it. That fixes about 85% of the cases. In some circumstances, the that's for Apple, the operating system needs to be updated. You'll have a copy of this in your bins as well, but here are the instructions for how to update the iOS. Students can log in as themselves. There's not a special tech login, and they just run through an update process. It can take 5 to 30 minutes depending on how out of date their operating system is. So we're really begging students to do this before test day. Remind any students you teach that take an EOC that they'll receive a 0 as 20% of their final grade if they don't take the test by May 26th. Please help notify your students of their test dates and locations well before the test date. I'd even recommend posting signs on your door if your kids are not testing in your room. Special ed teachers and guidance will help notify students of small group location. I've also shared with you a Google Sheet that tells where students who have small group testing or oral testing, where they will be, so you can help inform those students as well. If you have a senior who needs to test, they can test as late as the afternoon of May 17th. So if they're scheduled to test by then, they're fine. If they're scheduled to test after May 17th, they need to come see me. I am holding a session on the morning of Thursday, May 11th. That's also the morning of awards day practice. They can possibly finish beforehand, so especially if they're U.S. history, which most of them would be, they can take that test on May 11th. Here's just the estimated timetable for each of the tests. English obviously is the longest one, with some students taking 3 to 4 hours to finish. On test day, pick up all of your materials in my office by 7:55 if you're a morning session, or by 11:55 if you're afternoon session. You are welcome to pick up your afternoon materials that morning, but just make sure that you've picked up all of your materials pretty early. Otherwise, I'm going to be panicking. Remember that all test tickets are secure and may not be left unattended. Students taking third period EOCs should eat first lunch. Make sure that you take attendance on the roster that is provided and put it outside your door before testing begins. Also, make sure you complete an accurate makeup roster and attach those test tickets so that it'll be easy for us to find those test tickets for students who need to take the test. Scratch paper may be used on all tests this year. The test ticket this year is a full page. It's a full sheet instead of the small business card size ticket. So students can use the front and the back of that test ticket as scratch paper. If they need additional scratch paper, you're welcome to give them some. Just make sure that any paper with writing on it is secure and must be collected at the end of testing. You also have a seating chart to complete. Make sure you enter the first initial and the last name for each student who is taking the test in your room. Students with the same form number should not be seated beside each other. Form numbers are located on the main testing roster that also has like a master list of username and passwords. If you'd like your form numbers ahead of time to kind of look at your seating chart ahead of time, just let me know. I already have copies of those available. And here is what that looks like. The box highlighted in yellow, that's where you can find the form number. Verbal instructions for all subjects begin on page 64. Just a few notes to help you clarify for some of the verbal instructions. In one section, it says that you are supposed to say, if you need a sheet of scratch paper, raise your hand and I will give you one. Well, students are using their test ticket as scratch paper, so you're not going to give them an extra sheet of scratch paper unless they specifically need a second sheet. A second point of clarification, the TAM says if you do not have a calculator and would like to use one, raise your hand and I will give you one. We do not have enough calculators for all students. We will have 5 spare calculators on algebra and biology days, but once we run out, we run out. There is a calculator on the online testing software that they may use. The third thing is when it says when you have successfully started the test, I will come around to collect your test ticket. Well, since the test ticket and the scratch paper are the same, you can't collect that until the end of testing. So just so you know that there's some differences in what we're doing. If a student must leave the room, please pause the test. Students must resume the test within 20 minutes. There's actually a pause button to use. This kind of blanks out their screen so no other students can see their progress. Please also ask students to use the restroom before testing begins and remind them that students will only be allowed to leave the room for emergencies. I usually threaten the students and just tell them they can't use the bathroom at all, but I do allow for common sense and let them use the bathroom if needed. If you're having trouble, call Karen's staff in the main office and have her radio me. I will not have a runner, so it may take me a few minutes to get to you. If for some reason you have a situation that's not urgent, you just have a question, maybe you need a restroom break, I am okay with you shooting me a quick email. I will usually have my phone or I'll be sitting in front of my computer at some spot. If you need something that's not urgent and it's not interfering with testing, you can shoot me a quick email. Otherwise, if it's a situation that's preventing somebody from taking a test, call Karen in the main office and have her radio me. When you are finished testing for the day, again, call Karen and have her notify me and I'll come collect your materials. In the meantime, collect all student test tickets, scratch paper, and any other paper with student writing. Turn in the completed makeup roster and seating chart, and keep all students quiet and in the test location until we tell you otherwise. Please do not dismiss students because there's a good chance that the class they're going to is being used for testing or that teacher is being used for testing. Please do not allow students to use cell phones or any other computer applications on their Chromebooks until all testing has concluded in the room. I highly, highly encourage you to instruct students to close their Chromebooks after they have finished testing. It just becomes a lot for you to have to monitor and pay attention to what students are doing, make sure they're not talking to each other through their computers if you allow them to use Chromebooks while other students are still testing in the room. So I would just advise you not to allow them to use the Chromebooks until everyone has finished testing for the day. Students may keep a novel or magazine under their desk to read when they finish. They may not work on any academic material from a tested subject area, or they may not read textbooks from that tested subject area. Again, that's a thing that's really difficult for you to monitor. So I may just say no academic material unless you are 100% certain they are not working on something related to that subject area they are taking the test for. Calculators. Students may bring an approved calculator. It has to be cleared before and after testing, and there will be instructions in the bins. End of course can be completed without a calculator, but there is an online calculator available for students to use in the testing software. Students will ask, but cell phone calculators may not be used on this test. Again, I'll have 5 spare calculators in each bin. Please ask for some collateral to hold so that you make sure you get that calculator back from the student. Just a couple of security cases to look at just to make you think about what you can and can't do on the test. Miss Dixon is a first-year teacher administering EOC, and she's very conscientious about making sure that she does things correctly. She reads the online instructions, passes out the online test tickets, and then got worried that maybe she didn't do things right, and she went next door to ask for information from a fellow teacher. What she did wrong, she left the test tickets with students without a certified teacher in the room. Case number 2, Miss Douglas was conscientious, and she had really encouraged her students to use the provided scratch paper to write a rough draft for the field test. She sat at the back of the room and graded papers, wasn't paying attention to what students were doing. The day after the test, the school got a phone call from a parent who found a one-page handwritten essay in her child's backpack. When she asked if it was an assignment, he replied, "No, that's just the scratch paper I used during the end of course test." Again, make sure you collect anything the student has written on. Make sure they're not folding it up. I know sometimes they like to fold it up in little pieces. They like to tear it up, but anything they write on during that test has to be collected. Case number 3, Mr. Edwards wants to make sure that students get as many points as possible during testing. As each student finishes, he instructs them to go to the review and test screen. If he sees a blank response, he instructs the student to return to the item and answer it. You are not allowed to instruct students on which questions to answer. You're not allowed to point out which answers are left blank. You're not allowed to indicate to students in any way, shape, or form. While you may ask, did you review your choices? Did you answer everything? You are not allowed to direct them to the questions that they have left blank. And actually, the script actually does not have you saying anything when the student has finished. It has you collecting their materials at the end, and that's it. Case number 4. This particular teacher during the Algebra 1 test, a student raised his hand, and then Ms. Carboni replied with reading the question and the answer choices out loud to him. Again, that is a big no-no. No one should be reading any part of the test aloud to a student. All you should read aloud to a student, all the information you should give to a student is what is printed for you in the TAM. And the last case. Mr. Ortland began to read Miss Ortland began to read the directions for the biology test. She read the section informing students that they may not have electronic devices, but did not ask the students to place their belongings at the front of the room or to power off and remove their phones from their pockets. During the test, she saw a student pull his cell phone out of his pocket and appeared to be photographing the computer screen. What you need to make sure you do is that you read the instructions and follow the instructions exactly as they are in the TAM. Don't just not ask for cell phones because you don't think it's a big deal. Because if you didn't follow the instructions and you did not ask them to put away their cell phones and they did have them, it becomes a test security violation for you at this point. However, if you did read the instructions, you did instruct them to remove the phones, you did collect phones from them, and a student still kept the phone, At that point, that's an issue with the student that we would deal with. So, just a few security cases for you to think about what you can and can't do as far as testing. Please make sure that you have watched this entire video. I hope you have. Please make sure you've looked through those documents in the folder. And if you have any questions today or later on this week or before testing starts, please let me know, and I'll be glad to help you out however I can. Have a great day.